This summer, Lou only on BBC Television and Radio 3.
This is BBC One South West. And now Spotlight with Teresa Driscoll and Russell Labby.
Will the Spanish net millions in compensation?
The beat goes on as crime figures fall.
And the government wades into the river row.
Hello, good evening. Spanish fishermen have been told they're entitled to compensation after they were stopped from fishing in UK waters. The payout could run into millions of pounds. Today, South West fishermen said the decision was farcical. Eleanor Parkinson reports.
The foreign fishermen at the heart of this dispute, many of them Spanish, bought the licences to fish in UK waters after British fishermen had been persuaded to give them up in the name of conservation. 8 years ago, the British government tried to stop these flag of convenience vessels from taking advantage of the British fish quota, and more than 90 boats were forced to tie up, some for as long as 15 months. The skipper of these vessels claimed to have lost hundreds of thousands of pounds each. Today, the High Court ruled that they were entitled to compensation and that the British government should pay. The solicitor acting for the Spanish skippers left court warning that this bill could run into millions.
There are 97 applicants, upwards of 100 boats. Some of them have been kept from fishing for up to 2 years. It's big money. These are big investments that we're in.
We are very happy and we are very relaxed at the end. It is the final of 6-year litigation, and I think it is quite enough.
Today in Newlyn, fishermen said they weren't surprised at the ruling, and it proved that the British government could no longer protect its own waters.
It's only this last week our own government has signed away 62,000 square miles of British fishing rights around Rockall. Once again, our fishing rights, British fishermen's rights, are being given away.
It's given them a green light to buy as many licences as they want through their agents, whoever they are. That's it. We're back to square one.
In fact, this is what many in the British fishing industry fear. As the European Union expands to include countries from the Eastern Bloc, fishermen here say that UK waters will now be targeted by a new fleet of boats, not just from Spain, but from other countries such as Poland.
Well, joining us now from Newlyn is Elizabeth Stevenson from the Cornish Fish Producers Organisation. Elizabeth Stevenson, given that these quotas were sold legally and then the Spanish fishermen not allowed to fish them, you can't have an awful lot to grumble about this decision, can you?
A lot of the quotas weren't sold legally. A lot of these licences that are with these Spanish vessels were actually given to them free by this government before Spain joined the European Union. Spain wanted to gain access to our waters here. It wasn't a member of the European Union, so it got a lot of its fishing vessels registered as British. Then when the licensing system came in, our government gave those licences to those fishermen.
Yeah, a lot were sold by Cornish fishermen. A lot were sold by Cornish fishermen, though, weren't they?
Some of them were sold, but well over half of them were given to the Spanish owners by our government, and I'm fed up with the fishermen being blamed for it.
What does it matter to the Cornish fishermen that the Spanish might be entitled to this compensation? They're not going to have to pay them, are they?
Well, this is a thing that has been left over by the previous government. It's there, it's happened, there's nothing we can do about it. We want to really concentrate on the future, and we want the present government to try and rid us of these flagships. The fact that this compensation thing is not a surprise to me. It's been happening for a long time in the courts, and we've been expecting it. This is something left over from the last government's attempt to rid us of these flagships, and we want to look to the future and the present Labour government ridding us of this problem.
Realistically, do you think that's an option? Do you think you'll get that?
It has to be an option. If there's to be a future for the fishing industry, the government has to get rid of these flag of convenience and quota hopping vessels. They've promised to do so. They said that they would, in their election promises, resolve the problem, and this they must do. We can't possibly accept cuts to the genuine UK fleet as dictated by European Union and expect these flag of convenience vessels to continue to fish willy-nilly.
Elizabeth Stevenson, thank you.
Devon and Cornwall's Chief Constable says he's put more bobbies on the beat and reported crime has fallen for the third year in a row. Victim support groups in the region agree fewer crimes are being reported, but they're concerned that some people don't contact the police to avoid massive insurance bills. Here's James Old.
The Devon and Cornwall Constabulary is trying to build on its public profile. Putting more police on the streets and increasing the amount of time they spend with the public has been a long-term aim of Chief Constable John Evans. Encouraging performance figures released today suggest crime is continuing to fall and officers are spending more time on the beat, although it still amounts to little over half their working day.
We need to keep looking at it. We need to improve the way in which paperwork is handled in the police service. We are computerising our crime recording system, we are computerising so many other aspects, and we will continue to do that, to take advantage of information technology. All our officers now use the computerised systems. They don't write laborious reports where it can be avoided, but we continue to work to try and reduce what they have to do.
In 1996-97, there were 65 reported crimes for every 1,000 people in Devon and Cornwall, a slight decrease on the previous year. Violent crime went up by a small amount. Police constables now spend 55% of their time with the public. That's up on last year and represents a 7% increase over the last 2 years. There are still those with less reason to celebrate 3 years of falling crime in Devon and Cornwall. Last year, Ian Whiteway was forced to move from his home in central Exeter after his car was broken into 7 times in a matter of months.
At that time, they said they couldn't police the area properly through funding virtually. Resources were low. They didn't have a community policeman in the area, but they were obviously looking at placing one there.
Victim support groups in Devon and Cornwall say their own research bears out police reports of falling crime, but there's concern that many minor offences are going unreported, often because people want to keep their insurance costs down.
It's all part of a jigsaw, really, and if the police know about crimes, even if the people who report them feel there's no point, it's important that the police know that something's happened and they can build up a picture.
The Devon and Cornwall force has a larger area to cover with fewer officers than many other constabularies. It hopes today's figures will help to reassure people the 2 counties are among the safest and most crime-free in the country.
A German tourist is in a critical condition after being pulled from rough seas in Cornwall. He was one of 3 holidaymakers who were caught in rip currents at Porth Beach near Newquay. Spotlight's Lisa Holland reports.
By 10 o'clock this morning, a red flag was flying at Porth Beach near Newquay, a warning from lifeguards not to swim because of the dangers of a fierce rip current. The lifeguard shift starts at 10. Just 2 hours earlier, the beach had been unmanned. There was no such flag when a group of foreign holidaymakers went for an early morning dip. Maintenance man Anthony Redmond was on duty at a nearby hotel when the alarm was raised. 3 men were in difficulty.
One of the men was near enough out of the sea, just on his knees, so we just helped him out. The other man actually ended up crawling onto the rocks and collapsing. The other man was just see the body, the tide just bringing the body in. So me and the gentleman ran into the water and just dragged him out as far as possible.
A full rescue operation was launched involving Coastguards and a helicopter from RNAS Cllr. Conditions were described as bad.
We had a heavy swell and the winds were westerly force 6. So really, it wasn't fit to go in this morning. But of course the lifeguard wasn't there and the signs weren't up. So obviously they went in.
Even when the lifeguard service is in operation, when you have the flag system there in operation, still people ignore the warnings and the advice.
On a visit to Newquay today, North Cornwall MP Paul Tyler expressed his concern.
When there's been an incident like there has been this morning, I like to know whether we've been able to manage all right, whether the equipment has been there, whether the staffing, the manpower has been there. There have been concerns in the recent past about the way in which the Coastguard cuts may have cut into the service we can offer. We've got to be able to offer a very safe environment for people who come and spend their holidays in Cornwall. So obviously I'm concerned for all those reasons.
As lifeguards carried out routine training this afternoon, thoughts were with the holiday party said to be in shock. 2 men are still in hospital. One, a 39-year-old German, is in intensive care. His condition described as critical.
The government has ordered a temporary halt to plans to divert the course of 2 Devon rivers. The holding order prevents the County Council from giving final planning permission to the firm WBB to extend its Bull Clay works. David Silito reports.
Walking into the camp on the edge of the River Bovey, there was a good mood today. Although recovering from injuries after falling from a tree house, the protesters were proclaiming victory over today's holding order.
We wouldn't have had the media, and we wouldn't have brought it to public attention so much as the locals have been trying to do for years. So because we are high media coverage, what we do, yeah, we're definitely good at exposing capital gain companies like WBB.
In the village, the parish council was pleased and is finally seeing some hope, and they believe that the Riverside protest has been important.
I think the protesters have made the impact of the fact that they've actually brought it home to a much wider variety of people.
Just yards away is Watts, Blake and Behan's excavators. There have been months of negotiations with them and detailed plans, and the council is convinced it's made the right decision.
I don't think that there is any other issue to look at, any more information that we could have had which would have influenced the decision. So the government will see the same information that we had and see that we looked at it properly.
The holding order is not an unusual development. The battle is certainly not over, and the river's watchdogs down on the Bovey won't be moving out for a while yet.
The prosecution has given its concluding argument in the trial of the skipper of the Maria Assumpta at Exeter Crown Court. 56-year-old Mark Litchfield was described by the prosecution as a man of some arrogance who displayed a contempt for the dangers of the rocky shoreline of the North Cornwall coast. The Maria Assumpta hit rocks and sank off Padstow in 1995. Mr. Litchfield denies 3 counts of manslaughter. The trial continues.
Senior European Union officials have been discussing final details of the Eden project, which aims to create the world's largest plant house in China clay pits near St Austell. £37 million has been promised by the Millennium Commission, but another 12 million is needed from Europe. The scheme could create 300 jobs.
Customs officers have seized drugs worth £170,000 at Plymouth Ferry Port. The cannabis was found during a random check on a car which arrived on the Brittany Ferries ship Val de Loire. A man's due to appear before magistrates in Plymouth tomorrow.
Millions of pounds of environmental grants are being turned down by Dartmoor farmers because of a row over historic grazing rights. The money could help save thousands of acres of heathland, which is being damaged by sheep and cattle. Our environment correspondent Samantha Smith reports.
Grazing has destroyed a third of Dartmoor's heathland this century, and half of what remains is under threat. On this part of the moor, the only heather for miles is the result of an experiment which protects it from hungry stock.
If you look around at the surrounding grassland, you can see that there isn't any heather flowering at all. So we were actually quite surprised by the potential for heather regeneration in the absence of grazing.
That potential has been recognised by the government. Under a special scheme, compensation worth a total of £2 million a year is available to farmers who graze fewer stock. But 3 years after its launch, 93% of the Dartmoor Commons remains outside the scheme, to the frustration of the Ministry of Agriculture.
Dartmoor as a whole is potentially being denied the chance of improvements to the environment and to the general appearance of Dartmoor. I think farmers and commoners are losing the chance of government support to help them in farming in an environmentally friendly fashion.
Part of the problem is the complex way the commons are controlled. Ray Kelly is one of thousands of commoners who have grazing rights but don't exercise them. The scheme can only go ahead if they agree, but many fear they won't be adequately compensated.
It's the protection of the registered rights which they hold. It's as simple as that. They are commoners, the same as everyone. They have the same rights as the grazier, and they feel that, at least I do, that they should not be left out in this agreement.
Others believe it's the bureaucracy involved that puts farmers off.
People are nervous. They get so much paperwork now that, and they're basically farmers, and farming really is their business, and they just want to get on with their farming and try to make a living.
And another problem is emerging. These farmers are in the scheme and in order to comply now have to spend up to 4 hours a day shepherding stock which strays onto their common. Like their sheep, many farmers remain to be convinced that changing to a more environmentally friendly course is worthwhile.
Sam Smith on Dartmoor.
Now still to come in Spotlight tonight. Somerset face the Aussies.
And by royal appointment, the sculptors fit for a queen.
But now, for the last in our series on links between the Southwest and New Zealand and Australia. Tonight, Spotlight's Martin Tasker looks at how local people who've emigrated to the other side of the world cope with the emotional turmoil of being so far from home.
Clear and crisp a winter's Sunday afternoon in rural New Zealand. This is the Greta Valley in North Canterbury, some 50 miles north of Christchurch in the South Island. On his 500-acre Greta Gorge farm, Dean Johnson, assisted by his big hunt-away dog Chum, is on his bike, tending a flock of 1,500 Romneys he hopes will eventually end up on dinner plates in England. This is indeed heartland New Zealand, exemplified by the sight of Dean's 9-year-old son Tim developing his rugby skills in an adjoining paddock. Inside the farmhouse, 30-year-old mother of 3 Marilyn is putting her piano teaching profession into practice with her 5-year-old daughter Sarah. Altogether, it's the sort of traditional scene that's been lived out on countless New Zealand farms for generations. The only difference here being that half of one of those generations comes from Cornwall. A farmer's daughter from Luxullian, Marilyn has been in New Zealand for 10 years, drawn here by Dean, who was travelling and working in England where she was studying for her A-levels. It was quite a move.
A lot of reasons, really. It's just an adventure, probably. I wasn't very old, so I had that sense of, oh, this is all new and overseas, and I'd never been on an aeroplane or anything, so it just all came together quite nicely, and it is a beautiful place.
So are places near where she came from. A picture of Cllr, a reminder for Marilyn as she attacks the farm's accounts with the help of a computer programme. But while the farming practices may be similar, there are considerable differences in the settings.
It's quite isolated, and I used to feel weekends were family times at home, and I'd come here and it was quite empty. It felt quite empty at first. So that was the initial feeling that I had. Differences. Well, the scenery's different, of course. It's vast here. It's just so open and green and bright. Whereas in Cornwall, it's a little bit more sort of together. You know, everywhere's so close and walking distance.
I remember interviewing somebody who said that they felt they'd got over the homesickness when they could speak to the family in England without bursting into tears when they put the phone down. Have you got beyond that bit?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was all right on the phone. It was afterwards. I think Dean would get the brunt of my feelings after, sort of bottle it all up, and then he'd say, "Oh, you've got a letter, haven't you, from home?" I say, "Well, what's that got to do with it?" You know, yeah, yeah, I can cope with that now.
I know how she feels when I first left home. I hated it, but I was away travelling for 2 to 3 years, and I got used to it after a while, but I always knew I was coming home. That was one of the things Marilyn says that was in my favour. I knew I was coming home. She knows, you know, basically she isn't going back home, not to live anyhow.
I think I've got 2 homes. I just have to have a balance, that's all. This is basically base, this is my home, but there'll always be a bit of me in Cornwall. I'll never let that go, and I don't see why I should, you know. It's just, I talk about home in Cornwall, family, past, memories, you know, but this is where it's happening now, so this is future, so this is home as well.
Doesn't take long to adopt the accent, does it? Cricket now, and Somerset will tomorrow have the chance to do what England have been failing to do in recent weeks, beat the Aussies. It's the Aussies' only match between the 4th and 5th tests, and they're prepared today with a light workout. David Passmore reports.
The setbacks of early summer are but a distant memory for the Australians. Today, after a welcome layoff and a bit of golf, they could savour the moment. one up in the Test series against England, with a county game to help prepare them for the next. For Steve Waugh, one of the best batsmen in the world, it's a return to the ground where he spent the summer with Somerset 10 years ago.
It was a big learning experience back when I was 21 playing county cricket here. Martin Crowe was the other overseas pro, so I learned a bit off him, and Peter Roebuck was the captain, and as I say, it was a great experience for a young cricketer to play county cricket.
Touring sides traditionally use games against the counties for practice and a chance to rest top players. Captain Mark Taylor is taking time off, but with several of their stars needing a workout, they'll still be fielding a strong side.
We always play to win. You know, we think that's very important. But if players need to do a little bit more bowling or a little bit more batting, then we'll shuffle the orders around to make sure that they get the work that we want them to get. But we go out to try to win every game we play.
Somerset trained yesterday. Captain Peter Bowler won't play. A decision on the fitness of Somerset spinner Mushtaq will be taken in the morning.
We'll put out as good a side as we can, injuries allowing, but it'll probably be an opportunity for one or two of the younger players in the squad to get an opportunity to get a game.
A capacity crowd is expected if the weather holds. The incentive for Somerset, the prestige of beating the tourists, and a £7,500 sponsors prize for any county which defeats the Australians.
A special commission by Her Majesty the Queen has been completed by a firm of Somerset sculptors. 4 giant wooden statues are now on their way to Windsor Castle. Robert Wallace has the story.
Fit for a king, the Queen and the entire royal family, these wooden sculptures are heading for Windsor Castle. A year in the making, they're the work of a firm from Somerset. It's 4.5 years since fire ripped through the largest inhabited castle in the world, causing millions of pounds worth of damage and destroying national treasures. Now these wooden sculptures will be part of the renovation programme and will adorn the balustrade of the magnificent St George's Hall.
The line, of course, is courage and fortitude. And you have the baser energies of evil and good. And you have the unicorn, which stands for chastity, innocence, purity. So there are deep symbolisms to them. I hope she likes it. Yeah, I think that they are, well, they compare well with those things that have gone before. So I think that she'd be pleased. I hope so.
And they'll find out at a special presentation before Her Royal Highness in the autumn.
Very nice. We like a couple of those at Driscoll Towers.
I think they'd fill the whole garden, actually. I've got such a small one.
Let's take a look at the weather now. Here's Craig.
So you're going to Taunton tomorrow to see the Australians?
It would be nice. But
somebody said they might have brought you into the team.
Get on with the weather now.
I think not.
Yes, well, we're in a warm sector, really, at the moment, which means it's very humid. It means there's been a fair bit of cloud around over these last couple of days. But despite that cloud and not an awful lot of sunshine, the countryside around Cllr in Cornwall, of course, is still absolutely delightful. This is the parish of St Clement, the church there. Some rather fierce-looking skies there. Look at that delightful thatched roof. What skills we've got here in the West Country, and that symbolises Cornwall, doesn't it? A river, a creek, a couple of boats, tranquility, blue skies, and of course the statutory couple of gulls as well wandering around. Well then, in the warm sector, I said it's going to be humid indeed. It is a bit of difficulty with putting the symbols on for this evening because we're really not quite sure how much of that sunshine we're going to get. It seems to be coming and going. There's a lot of cloud around, that's for sure, and it will be mainly dry, but don't rule out the odd spot or two of drizzle. And indeed, as we go through tonight, we'll find there'll be rather more in the way of drizzle, more particularly over the moors and down that north coast there and in the Isles of Scilly. There'll be some mist and some hill fog coming along with it as well, but with the mild and muggy night, the minimum temperatures 13 or 14 Celsius is 55 to 57 degrees Fahrenheit. The visibility good, but moderate or maybe poor in some of that drizzle. As far as the winds are concerned, from the west, generally force 4 to 5. That's a moderate or fresh breeze. The strongest winds probably in the far west there. So, as far as the Channel line is concerned, it's a similar sort of picture. It'll be a dry evening and night, although it will become increasingly cloudy. And by the morning, some mist patches down the Cherbourg Peninsula there and around the islands. The minimum temperature, 14 Celsius, 57 degrees Fahrenheit, and the winds, much as the mainland, from the west, force 4 to 5. So tomorrow morning we start off quite bright with some sunny spells around the region, although it will be dull and misty in the Channel Islands. But then in the afternoon we'll see the cold front coming in at the back end of the warm sector, taking in fact the mild and muggy weather with it. But it'll also bring some rain around for a time, some mist and fog down this north coast, some fog over the moors. It's probably going to be well into the evening before the rain gets into East Devon, Somerset and Dorset. By that time it'll have brightened up with some sunshine in the Channel Islands. The maximum temperatures tomorrow, 22 inland, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, cooler elsewhere, particularly on the coasts, exposed to the westerly winds, which are still going to be stuck in that westerly slot, still force 4 to 5. The surf, 3 feet and choppy on the north coast, 2 feet and choppy on the south coast. On then to the times of high water, and in Padstow at 4:52 and 5:16, in Plymouth 5:06 and 5:28. Finally then to the outlook, our picture this evening from Holly Mundy. She's 10 and comes from Torquay. Well, we've got Saturday first of all, variable winds. There will be some mist and drizzle around. Sunday mainly dry with sunny spells. Teresa.
Thanks, Craig. And the main news again. The government has ordered a judicial inquiry into the death of the teenager Stephen Lawrence, who was stabbed at a London bus stop in 1993. And Spanish fishermen have been told they're entitled to press for compensation after they were stopped from fishing in UK waters.
That's it from us for tonight. Friday tomorrow. Hurrah! We'll see you then. Bye for now.
The weekend beckons.
Well, Christians are supposed to love everyone, aren't they? And hippies are human beings.
Oh yeah, a beautiful man, the vicar, you know, he really is, you know, he's been called a hippie lover, you know.